A list is another important data type in Python. Lists are similar to strings. A string, as you recall, is a sequence of characters like the string hello, whereas a list is a sequence of arbitrary values. For example, here we have a list of integers. And when you put a list in your code, you surround it with square brackets, which I'm showing in blue here, and you separate the individual values by commas. And those values are known as the elements of the list. Now, it doesn't have to be integers. Here I have a list of strings. So each element of the list is a string. So we have 4 elements here again. And here we actually have a list with different types of values. So the first element is a string, the second element is an int, the third element is a string, and then the fourth element here is itself a list. So you can have a list that is nested inside another list. Now the good news is the operations that we learned about for strings we can also apply to lists. And for applying these operations, we're going to want to be able to number the elements of the list, just like we did with the characters in a string. Here I'm showing you the index values using the approach in which we start with 0 for the leftmost element and work our way from left to right. You can also take the other approach where you put -1 for the last element and you work your way from right to left and become more and more negative. But let's assume here that we're taking that other approach, at least for now, and you can see I've taken this list of 4 strings and I've assigned it to the variable majors, and I'm doing this at the shell, which is why you see these 3 greater than symbols. That's the shell prompt. You might want to try this actually on your own at the shell. And let's assume that we do that. And then if I type in this expression, which is an indexing expression, what I'm going to get is the element at position 2, which is English, the string English. I can also do a slice, so I'm saying start at position 1, go up to but not including position 3. And what we get in this case is a sublist containing element 1 and element 2 of the list. I can figure out the length of the list using the len function, and here it tells me there are 4 elements, and I can concatenate 2 lists. Here I'm concatenating the list represented by the variable majors with this new list that only has 1 element, and when I enter this expression at the shell, I get a new list with 5 elements. I can also do skip slicing, so here I'm saying I want to use the entire list as my starting point, because notice I'm leaving out the start and end values, but I'm using a stride length of -2. So what does that give me? I get this because I'm starting at the end, and that's because my stride is negative, and I'm going every other element. So I get psych first, that's string, and then I skip and I get math, and then I get nothing else because if I skip another 2, I come off the list. Here's one subtle difference between strings and lists. With a string, whether I do a slice or whether I use just an index with a single value, I'm going to get a string in both cases. So here you can see I've taken the string terriers and assigned it to the variable s, and whether I say give me a slice starting at 1 and going up to but not including 2, or whether I just do an index with a value of 1, I'm going to get the same result, which is the string e, because it is the character at position 1 in the string. But if I do something similar with a list, I'm not necessarily going to get the same result. So with lists, a slice always gives me a list, whereas doing an expression with just a single index is going to give me that single element, and it may or may not be a list. So take, for example, this list that we looked at earlier. Let's assume that I assign it to the variable info in the shell. Now, if I do those 2 comparable expressions, right, one of which is a slice, just like I did up here, and one of which is just using a single index, you can see that I don't get the same thing this time, because the slice gives me a sublist containing the element at position 1, whereas if I just do the index, I'm just going to get that element. It's not going to give me a list. Now, it is possible that indexing will give you a list. So for example here, I'm asking for the element at position -1. And because that element is itself a list, I'm going to see that list when I enter the expression. Okay, let's do some more practice with this. Let's say I want a slice that starts at position 2 and goes all the way to the end because I'm leaving out this last number. That's going to give me this sublist. And you can see there's a list inside that sublist. Now this expression looks a little complicated. What we're going to do is work our way from left to right. So we start by figuring out what info -1 is. And again, that's the last element of the list info. And in this case, that last element is itself a list. And then this -1 here is saying, give me the last element of that list. And so I end up with this float 460.9. Let's do that same type of thing with this expression. So again, we start with info 0, which is the first element of the overall list, which is this string Star Wars. And then the -4 is going to go into that string and get the character at position 4. And so you can see we get the W because it's -1, -2, -3, -4.